Zhang Yi did not rush to kill Hermit Boon. After defeating his opponent, he immediately chose to open the dimensional gate and leave this place. This was to prevent the other party's reinforcements from arriving here. After some time, he arrived at a place more than 10 kilometers away from the battlefield. I hope this guy is still alive. Zhang Yi's mind entered the dimensional space. At this time, Boon had already been in the dimensional space for more than 5 minutes, and his mind had experienced more than 10 years of blankness. This kind of torture was unacceptable to any normal human being and could easily drive a person insane. However, Zhang Yi did not let his guard down. His opponent was an elite member of the Colombian Navy, whose willpower was certainly much stronger than that of ordinary people. Therefore, the first thing he did was to neutralize Boon's fighting ability. Zhang Yi opened the dimensional gate, leaving only an empty space for an arm, then pulled his arm out. Flower's big claw pressed down on it immediately. Zhang Yi pulled out Holy Judgment and cut open his combat suit. Then he took out a needle containing compound number 3 and injected it into Boon. The injection, administered directly into a vein, was more effective than oral administration and took effect faster. He had personally experienced this drug, which could completely suppress his supernatural powers in 1 minute. So Zhang Yi waited another 5 minutes. After all, people's physiques are different. After 5 minutes, he released Boon from the dimensional space. At this moment, Boon's eyes were empty, and he lay on the ground like a vegetable. Zhang Yi asked Flower to hold him down. Even though he had been injected with the drug, they had to prevent him from developing drug resistance and suddenly fighting back. As it turned out, Zhang Yi's caution was unnecessary, but he would rather do something useless than make a mistake. In a game between high-level mutants, a small oversight could cost someone their life. Zhang Yi opened the Two Realms junction and was fully prepared. Then he forced a bottle of truth serum down Boon's throat. The suffering he had endured in the past was not in vain, as it had given him a lot of experience on the battlefield. This stuff was very useful for interrogating enemies and obtaining information. Now, tell me how many of you came this time? And what are each of your abilities? Zhang Yi stared intently at Boon's eyes and said to him. If he made any strange moves, Zhang Yi would cut off his head. However, things did not take a turn for the worse. Boon's emotions were close to collapse, and the effects of the truth serum made him reveal everything he knew to Zhang Yi. This time, there are 4 forces that came to the island. The Colombian Navy deployed Hell's Lock. The Neon Organization Izumo sent 2 of their strongest fighters, Tsukuyami and Kagetsuchi, who are the Royal Pillars. The Pelican Organization Takamagara sent Amaterasu and Susanoo. We have no information about their abilities. As for Scylla and Marley, that group of trash is too weak to be taken seriously. They're just here to make up the numbers. Boon's tone was calm but condescending when he mentioned Scylla and Marley. However, he clearly took the mutants from Neon much more seriously. Zhang Yi also realized that the mutants from Neon were obviously much stronger. However, after experiencing the Eclipse Moon turmoil, he had already guessed as much. After all, Neon itself had a large population and was not weak. From the perspective of strength, perhaps the entire Neon was close to the level of a large region of the Huashu Kingdom. So, what about Hell's Lock? How many people came, and what are each of their abilities and ability indexes? Answer me. Zhang Yi asked coldly. All the members of Hell's Lock are here, except for that bastard Cardalus. The members are Deputy Captain Billy the Kid, Yashin Canelo, with an ability index of 9,900 points. He is the real hidden boss of the Colombian Navy and is even more highly regarded than Cardalus. The God of Hunting, Vito Bardia. His ability index is 9,800 points. He is a madman who specializes in hunting. Once he sets his sights on someone, no one can survive. Zhang Yi listened silently to Boon's explanation and had a rough idea of the opponents he was about to face. This information is very important to me. I should thank you. Zhang Yi looked at Boon, whose eyes were empty, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. If he hadn't obtained this information and learned about his opponent's abilities in advance, then when they met again in the future, he might have to go to great lengths to guess his opponent's abilities and weaknesses. Boone had helped him solve this problem perfectly. Perhaps even the Columbia Navy itself could not have imagined that their powerful Hell's Lock members would be captured alive. Thank you very much for your dedication. Zhang Yi stripped off his combat uniform. After carefully examining it, he couldn't help but feel emotional. Columbia's military and technological strength was indeed superior to that of the Huashu Kingdom. Their military expenditure, which was several times that of the Huashu Kingdom every year, was not wasted. Even the combat uniforms worn by the mutants were better than Zhang Yi's. However, that wasn't a big problem. Now that he had the combat uniform, he could ask Liu Karen to replicate it, and then this valuable item would be his. Zhang Yi searched Boone's body and took everything, including his combat uniform, body armor, and various other items. In the end, he only left Boone with a pair of Columbia pants. Then, Zhang Yi stabbed him directly in the heart with his sword, and the dark void flame burned, engulfing Boone's body. After confirming that Boone would not suddenly fight back, Zhang Yi reached out and began to absorb Boone's origin power. The members of Hell's Lock were all high-level mutants with abundant origin power. This absorption was like drinking a cup of sweet milk tea for Zhang Yi, and it was a great tonic. It restored his exhausted supernatural abilities to their original state. However, the effect on the enhancement of his supernatural abilities was not particularly significant. Zhang Yi couldn't help but feel emotional. Sure enough, the further you go, the harder it gets. Mutants of this level can be considered the top fighters in the mutant world today, but for me, it's difficult to make much progress. Sure enough, I have to find more prey. With that thought, Zhang Yi immediately made a decision. He took out the communication device from Boone's combat suit and slashed it with his sword. Electricity splashed everywhere, and even the strongest material shattered into pieces under the slash of Edelman metal. Zhang Yi stood up, with Flower and Lele behind him, who had already finished eating the Mountain Boar King. I'll wait here for you to come find me, Hell's Lock. A meaningful smile appeared on Zhang Yi's lips, then he turned around and disappeared into the thick poisonous mist. Boone's empty skull was left behind where he had been standing. Hermit Boone's communication signal was interrupted. Throughout the Columbia Navy's temporary command center, red alarms echoed through the conference room, urgent and heart-pounding. This was an emergency alarm that only sounded when something very serious happened. An officer rushed over and reported to General Horn, the overall commander. General, the communication signal from Thor has been interrupted. It must be a problem with the communication equipment. Horn raised his head sharply, his eyes as sharp as a white-headed eagle. Communication signal interrupted? How is that possible? The communication equipment was connected to the combat suits. The Hell's Lock combat suits were made of the highest quality military materials. Even if there was a mechanical failure, there would be a backup. Therefore, this news meant that Boone was most likely dead in battle. The officer said, General, I hate to say this, but that is what the intelligence reports are indicating. Furthermore, not long ago, Thor was pursuing a mutant codenamed Chaos, and... He raised his head and glanced cautiously at Horn before continuing. They engaged in a fierce battle. Horn's huge hooked nose twitched uncontrollably, and his breathing instantly became heavy. He turned his head away, and the red dot marking Boone's location was flashing rapidly. You mean Thor has been killed, right? The officer replied truthfully, that is indeed a possibility. If he wasn't killed, then he was captured. I think the former is more likely. He couldn't imagine anyone being able to capture a member of Hell's Lock alive. Horn's eyes were extremely gloomy as he stared at the location on the 3D map, not speaking for a long time. It was only the second day of the operation, and a member of Hell's Lock was suspected of being killed in action. This was a huge deviation from their plan. Lieutenant Colonel McGrady walked over and looked at General Horn's gloomy face. He couldn't help but swallow hard. When they sent Boone to hunt down Chaos, they all thought it was a sure thing. Even if he couldn't complete the mission, with Thor's abilities, there were few who could kill him if he wanted to escape. However, now the iron reality was staring them in the face. Boone was most likely dead. General Horn. Horn didn't look at him, but said, "Bring me the information on chaos. I want to see what he has that allowed him to defeat Thor." The information they had collected on Zhang Yi was not comprehensive. This was because Zhang Yi had no previous combat experience at sea. Those who had seen him in action had basically all been killed. Cardalis had had a brief encounter with Zhang Yi, but Zhang Yi had only demonstrated his powerful defensive abilities, nothing more. Therefore, the intelligence gathered was incomplete. Horn looked at the information his men had brought him and stared intently at Zhang Yi's information. What does this guy want to do? General Horn's face was full of confusion. If he is so powerful, he should be fighting for the divine source. Why is he hunting mutants in the outer regions? Could he be a smoke bomb deliberately sent by the Huashu kingdom to distract us? No, that's impossible. Who would send such a high-level mutant to be a smoke bomb? That's like sending the Navy SEALs to find a missing child. McGrady gave his opinion. Perhaps for him, hunting mutants is more valuable than fighting for the source of God. According to our intelligence, chaos comes from the Jiangnan region. The Jiangnan region is weaker than the East Sea region, so this operation is led by the East Sea region. Therefore, even if chaos obtains the source of God, he may not be able to truly possess it. Horn looked puzzled when he heard this. Does hunting still have any meaning for him? His ability index is at least 9,800 points, close to the 10,000 point threshold. Only the divine source can allow him to break through the delta-level bottleneck. McGrady pondered for a moment and said slowly, "Perhaps he has no threshold?" Horn frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" McGrady rubbed his chin. "Perhaps his potential is Epsilon itself. So for him, he only needs to hunt high-level mutants to upgrade, rather than fighting with others for the source of God." At this point, he paused for a moment, then continued, "Just like Billy the Kid." Horn heard this and relaxed his frown. If that's the case, then it's even more unreasonable. We all know that even mutants with Epsilon talent can't easily cross that threshold. If it were that easy, then the number of Epsilons in Columbia would at least double. McGrady's face revealed a strange smile. "Oh, General Horn. Maybe he doesn't know about this at all?" According to the information we have, this mutant codenamed Chaos has a cooperative relationship with the Jiangnan region and is not directly affiliated with the Jiangnan region headquarters. Horn thought for a moment and said with some surprise, "Are you saying that the Jiangnan region of the Huashu kingdom did not do its best to train him? So a mutant who should have become a level Epsilon was delayed in his promotion due to internal strife?" McGrady smiled and said, "Isn't that very common? It's always been like that in the Huashu kingdom. If a capable person does not show loyalty and become a member of a certain faction, they will definitely not be given important positions due to suspicion. Relationships are more important than ability in their world." Horn sighed deeply and shook his head, saying, "I don't really understand. However, over the years, many talented people from the Huashu kingdom have joined us in Columbia." McGrady said, "That's good news for us." His eyes sharpened. "If Chaos is really a near Epsilon mutant, we can take advantage of the fact that he hasn't grown up yet and wipe him out. That way, we can eliminate a powerful opponent ahead of time." Horn nodded, agreeing with McGrady's approach. Moreover, with Boone dead, they had to strike back with thunderous force to maintain the prestige of the Columbia Navy and deter their opponents. Horn placed his hands on the workbench and stared intently at the three-dimensional map in front of him. Billy the Kid still has important work to do. Don't let anyone disturb him in obtaining the source of God. So let's leave the hunt for Chaos to Uller. Among the 7 members of Hell's Lock, each one is a top-notch mutant selected from thousands. Each of them possesses extraordinary abilities. The third member of the team, Vito Bardia, codenamed Uller, the god of hunting, is a mutant who specializes in hunting. With an ability index of 9,800, no prey he has ever targeted has ever escaped. If we compare him to Li Fengxian, the Sky Dragon King, who also has an ability index of 9,800, his combat effectiveness is a whole level above Li Fengxian. This is because he was one of the most elite Navy SEALs in Columbia and underwent the most rigorous training. He is also a veteran who has participated in many battles. Even on the battlefield, the number of enemies who died at his hands exceeded 3 digits, which is an extremely terrifying number in modern warfare. Add to that the most advanced weapons and equipment provided to him by the Columbia Navy. When most people hear this man's name, they shiver from head to toe. Huang realized the horror of chaos, so he directly dispatched Uller to hunt him down. However, he also learned from his previous mistakes. The members of Hell's Lock all have their own jobs, so it's impossible for more than 2 members of Hell's Lock to be dispatched at the same time to hunt down a single mutant. But a tactic of adding fuel to the fire is definitely not advisable. Horn ordered his men to send a message to every mutant of the Allied forces on Star Island. The reward for chaos was raised to 1 billion points. These points were enough to exchange for $1 billion Columbia dollars worth of supplies. Such a huge reward shocked every mutant of the joint forces on the battlefield. Even the officers at the command center were astonished. Such a high reward is a huge expense even for our naval base. Should we ask Commander Fleet Admiral Douglas for instructions first? Horn stared at the location where Boone had fallen and said coldly, "No. An enemy with Epsilon potential definitely deserves such a reward. He must mobilize all the forces on Star Island to eliminate this potential threat." On Star Island. Amidst the ruins, the ground was covered with blood and corpses. A reconnaissance unit from the East Sea region that had arrived here in advance had been completely wiped out. On the red snow, several huge gray wolves bared their teeth and looked around fiercely. There are no other enemies nearby. A man in gray-white combat uniform walked over, gently stroking the gray wolf's head with his right hand and holding a huge composite bow wrapped in gray cloth in his left hand. He was the third-ranked member of Hell's Lock, Vito Bardia, codenamed Uller. Uller was the god of hunting in Norse mythology, as well as the god of snow. When winter came, he would replace Odin, the god of war, and reign over the realm of the gods. This ice age seemed to be his time. Bardia was stroking the gray wolf's fur with his gloves when suddenly, an order came from the command center via his communication device. Bardia listened silently, a mocking look flashing in his eyes. "Yes, I understand." He ended the call, looked up at the sky, and suddenly exclaimed, "Hermit Boone, what a useless guide, he died so quickly. However, it seems that a very good prey has appeared here." He couldn't help but lick his lips. The feeling of encountering a powerful prey made him excited. "Then, let's start hunting." After Zhang Yi killed Boone, he uploaded the news back to the command center. After all, he couldn't pass up the points he would get for killing a high-level mutant. At the command center, they quickly analyzed the images Zhang Yi sent back and identified the mutant he had killed. He's a member of Hell's Lock, codename Thor. His ability index is 9,600. The intelligence officer quickly reported this information to the command center's senior leadership. Sidhu Jin's eyes widened, and his face was filled with uncontrollable ecstasy. Chaos did a good job. He killed a member of Hell's Lock so quickly. As Sidhu Jin spoke, he smiled at the officers of the East Sea region, especially Li Tianyang. The officers of the Jiangnan region also showed expressions of joy and pride on their faces. When they stood up, they stood even straighter. Since the beginning of the joint operation, the East Sea region had always shown an arrogant attitude, suppressing them. Li Tianyang was even more blunt in mocking their lack of strength. However, now, the battlefield was filled with good news, all coming from the Jiangnan region's mutants. This was quite a slap in the face. Li Tianyang's expression was indeed a little ugly. Chaos again? Before, he could say that Zhang Yi had only killed some small fry, not worth mentioning. But he didn't dare to treat the members of Hell's Lock as small fry. They had been dealing with the Columbia Navy at sea for many years. They knew the strength of the members of Hell's Lock all too well. It was those people who had forced them to remain within the blockade and prevented them from entering the ocean. Although Li Tianyang's expression was ugly, he couldn't continue to be sarcastic this time. He could only endure the discomfort in his heart and say coldly, "Well done. Pass this news on to everyone and let them know that Hell's Lock is not that powerful." Soon, the news that Chaos had killed Thor spread throughout the Huashu Kingdom's team of mutants on Star Island. This news shocked everyone. When the captain of the demon squad, Huang, heard the news, his eyes sharpened. That guy has always been showing off. I can't let him steal the limelight. He clenched his fists, wishing he could find a mutant from the joint forces on the battlefield and start fighting right away. However, the entire poisonous mist area was as big as 3 Tianhai cities. If it weren't for Zhang Yi, a mutant with special abilities, how could they find prey so easily? Everyone was moving forward cautiously in the thick fog. While looking for prey weaker than themselves, they also had to avoid encountering opponents that were too powerful. Just as Huang was full of fighting spirit and his eyes were filled with murderous intent, a soft, slender hand wearing a silver glove was placed on his shoulder. "Captain, control your emotions." Huang turned around and saw a sweet and gentle face smiling at him. Huang was not tall, only 1.6 meters. But the delicate and lovely woman had to bend down to comfort him, so her height seemed exaggerated. She was Liu, the deputy captain of the demon squad. She was 180 centimeters tall with a slender figure, a sweet face, and flowing long hair. But none of that was the point. The point was her exaggerated figure, which was enough to make most women feel inferior, giving her a maternal aura. Combined with her rare 180 centimeters height, the visual impact was simply overwhelming.